Hello again. There's only one real big topic in the market at the moment, and that's Greece. I've been speaking to Craig Erlam from Oanda. Craig, we're speaking whilst this meeting's going on, so it's very difficult to talk as things are moving so fast. But how do you think the situation stands between Greece and its lenders?
I think things have improved. I think now we are reaching that final deadline, and this deadline has been talked about so many times. Every time we see a deadline appear and everyone starts talking about it, it gets pushed back and a new deadline gets created. I think the difference right now is the 30th of June is 8 days away. Greece does owe 1.6 billion euros to the IMF. It said repeatedly it doesn't have this cash. It does have 1.5 billion euros for pensions and public sector wages, which it said itself it is prioritising over any other debt repayments, but it doesn't have the money to pay the IMF. So this is ultimately the deadline. If they don't meet this deadline, if they don't get the bailout funds in time for this deadline, they will default on the debt, and then the next what follows could be quite catastrophic. It could be the case of the ECB withdrawing its emergency liquidity assistance to Greek banks, which inevitably would then lead to capital controls, potential collapse, potential exit from the Eurozone. So I think the 30th of June really is the final deadline that we can see in place. But really a deal needs to be agreed before then, so that this money can actually be dispersed. It can pass through the relevant parliaments, and then it can be dispersed in time for Greece to make this payment on the 30th. I'm not necessarily sure that will happen. I think we know that the IMF has said it won't offer Greece that month-long delay when it can actually accept its debts before it declares it's defaulted. But I think if a deal is in place on the 28th, for example, there's no reason why the IMF would then still declare Greece bankrupt on the 30th. They'd have nothing to gain.
Yeah, how important is the 7.5 billion? Is that the important figure? Because if you look at the amount of money that Greece owes over the coming months, that comes to something like 10 billion. So is it just the 7.5 billion that's important, or is it just the other parts of the deal which are also equally vital?
Well, I think the deal itself is very important because it shows that I think it's going to show really that both sides are willing to compromise. We are talking about there's probably going to be some form of debt restructuring, I think, alongside this deal, because Greece was promised only a couple of years ago that if it achieved its primary surplus when it agreed to the second bailout, that debt restructuring talks could actually begin in some form of debt forgiveness. So I do think this is going to be part of the deal. So again, it shows both sides are willing to offer some form of compromises. I think with Greece, they are looking now, like I said, they've raised they've considered, or they're accepting that they're going to raise the pension age gradually towards 67. That's in the latest bailout offering. There's talks on different VAT reforms as well. So there is some compromise from both sides, and I think these are the real important parts of the deal that we needed to see some form of compromise on for a long-lasting solution, which I do think we will actually get. But like you say, they owe so much money in the next few months. This 7.5 billion isn't going to be enough to cover it. So I think what we're effectively going to see this week is some form of bridging deal, but then inevitably a third bailout is going to have to be discussed.
So how high do you think we'll get on the euro-dollar rate if we do see a deal in terms of Greece?
I think, to be honest, I don't see enormous amounts of upside from a deal with Greece, because I don't really think, if you look at the last month, for example, it hasn't really weighed on euro-dollar at all. Euro-dollar's been rallying. All this time we've been discussing the possibility of capital controls, of Greece defaulting, of Greece exiting, and yet the euro is rallying. I think euro-dollar and currencies in general react far more to actual changes and far more to how that impacts interest rates, and far more to how that may impact inflation, which inevitably impacts interest rates, than uncertainty and the possibility of X, Y, or Z happening. If Greece leaves the Eurozone, I have no doubt, or I don't have no doubt, but I do believe that we would see euro-dollar falling, because that impacts the entire impacts the entire Eurozone. That impacts what the ECB would do. The ECB would probably have to be forced to offer some form of additional accommodation in order to help this fragile recovery in the Eurozone maintain any form of momentum. So I do think if Greece left the Eurozone, we would see the euro struggle as a result. But I don't see an enormous amount of upside from the status quo, because the status quo is being priced into the euro-dollar pair at the moment.
Well, thanks to Craig. Stay tuned for more interviews and analysis, but from London. Goodbye.